Regional bloc ECOWAS suspends Guinea's membership following the country's recent military coup. The Taliban clears the departure of 200 people who remained in Afghanistan after the withdrawal of foreign troops. And hundreds displaced as flooding continues to wreak havoc in western Uganda. Hello and a very warm welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Lindy Mtongana in Nairobi. Also coming up this hour. The depreciation of Ghana's cedi is causing concern among many businesses. And in sport, Tanzanian boxer Hassan Mwakinyo retains his African Boxing Union welterweight title. In our top story this hour, the Economic Community of West African States has suspended Guinea's membership to the regional body following a military coup which ousted President Alpha Condé. Leaders of the bloc are demanding Condé's release from custody and urging a return to normal constitutional order. They are sending a delegation to the capital Conakry for talks later today. Guinea's main opposition leader says his party is open to taking part in a political transition. The military coup has been condemned by Guinea's partners and international organizations. Well, let's get to the latest on this now. We're joined live from Abuja by CGTN's Phil Ihaza. Phil, as we know, ECOWAS is sending a delegation to Conakry for talks later today. Can you give us more details on this?
Thanks, Lindy. Indeed, we've been following the meeting with ECOWAS, and it's no surprise that they have come up with the communique, and some of the decisions made by the ECOWAS, the regional leaders from that meeting yesterday, late yesterday, was that, of course, they have suspended Guinea from the bloc, and they've also demanded that the military return to constitutional order, also release the president, ousted President Alpha Condé, unconditionally. But the focus now is that they're not just making that decision on paper, they are sending a high-level delegation to Conakry, as you rightly said. The point is that they are supposed to go there to force the hand of this military currently seizing power to try to return to constitutional order, of course, release the president as well. But, you know, looking at what's been going on in Guinea, the fact that the soldiers have been gaining support from the citizens and all of that, and also some analysts say that's a really, really tall order. So maybe what the ECOWAS delegation also will be looking into is to see how they can ensure that the military, in the shortest possible time, transit power, to a democratically elected president, or even install a transitional government to be able to do that, because the ECOWAS stands for installing, governments by the ballot and not with bullets. So that's one of the things that they'll be focusing on. But of course, they're supposed to meet with have those discussions in Guinea later today, and we'll see how that meeting goes. But the focus is to ensure that democracy stands in that region, in West Africa region, as the body holds strongly.
Well, thank you so much, Phil Ihaza, there live for us in Abuja. And of course, it does remain to be seen what ECOWAS will achieve with these meetings today. Now, uncertainty continues to reign in Guinea as the country's airport sits rather quietly, and signs of an economic slowdown are underway. Desiree Canon reports.
After the coup d'etat in Guinea, airlines are flying empty planes to Conakry, the country's capital. Yesterday, for example, when we departed from Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire to Conakry, we were almost 20 passengers on the plane. When we arrived in Conakry, we found the international Conakry airport empty and quiet. The city is somewhat busy with some traffic jams. There is also the presence of police and military forces throughout the capital. As for the economic activity, it has not yet resumed well, because some banks and shopping centers are still closed, and also because some airlines have suspended their flight to Conakry. There is also a curfew ban on going out from 10 p.m. GMT to 4 a.m. GMT. So we are still waiting to see what will happen in days to come. Desiree Kano, CGTN, Conakry, Guinea.
Well, let's bring you some analysis now on the situation in Guinea. We are joined by Paul Ejime, a global affairs expert and a consultant to ECOWAS on peace and security, communications, the media and elections. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Now, unlike other regional blocs, it seems that ECOWAS has been rather proactive in matters of peace and security. Even so, the region remains relatively unstable. What is missing in ECOWAS's approach that would help to avoid these military takeovers?
Thank you for having me. You are right that ECOWAS, of all the regional economic communities, blazed the trail in peace and security. Remember, they settled the crisis in Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and other places, and they have the instrument, or if you talk about protocol, on good governance and democracy that has zero tolerance for this type of coup or taking power by any other means than constitutional means. But what has happened over the last 10 years is that we have seen a situation where even ECOWAS itself, the AU and other pro-democracy organizations have either endorsed or turned a blind eye to what some people now call constitutional coups, because that is what. So what happened in Guinea looks like a counter coup. The politicians are carrying out constitutions, coups against their constitutions by changing it to third terms or to cling on to power, and then the military now came up with their own coups. The people are caught up in the middle. So I think ECOWAS will have to ratchet up his own strategy. There is no, insufficiency of protocol to deal with that, but the political will. The leadership at ECOWAS will now have to go back to the drawing board and see what it was doing in the last 20 years or so. Indeed. Before I talked about last 10 years that has been the challenge, to make sure that politicians are not changing constitutions like they are changing, whatever. It is not allowed, and then allowing people to run roughshod over the people, the leaders.
And Paul, let's really take a look at the African Union for a moment. Its response to this crisis and others has been put into question. There are those that suggest that the Union is complacent, that it really doesn't go very far beyond simply condemning these events. What is your view on the AU's level of action and response?
It is insufficient and if anything, ineffective. I think it falls with what I was saying about ECOWAS. And remember that the AU is supposed to be supported by what you call the regional economic communities like ECOWAS. They are sitting there. They will send observers to observe elections. But before an election, what happens? They will watch things get out of hand, and then until the military takes over before you begin to condemn. That is allowing the horse to bolt from the stable, and then you begin to chase. It makes no sense. That is chasing shadows. I think they will have to start from before elections are held, to be able to know whether the environment, they talk about level playing field, whether the ingredients are there for you to have elections with integrity. Because if you don't have credible elections, this is what the kind of result that you have. And then where you have corruption or nepotism and all that, bad governance, these are the results.
Indeed, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much. Global Affairs expert Paul Ejime joining us there via Zoom. Let's turn now to the latest on the situation in Afghanistan. 200 Americans and other foreigners who remained in Afghanistan are now set to depart on charter flights from Kabul on Thursday. U.S. officials say the Taliban agreed to their evacuation, among the first since U.S. forces fled the capital last month. The White House says it will not allow charter flights to land at U.S. bases. Meanwhile, just 2 days after the Taliban announced an interim government, a number of foreign countries remain disapproving. The capital has so far seen a number of women-led protests broken up by the Taliban. The country's new interior ministry says due to security concerns, demonstrators should apply for permission. Let's go live to Kabul. We're joined by CGTN's Zamar Alai Abbasan for the latest. Zamar Alai, firstly, how are people reacting to this new caretaker government?
Hello. Well, people have different reactions to the formation of the new interim government in Afghanistan. Some of them say it's time for the examination of Taliban, yet we have to examine them. And some other are sparkling anger over the Taliban. There have been many protests against the announcement of the new acting government of the Taliban, because they say all the members of the cabinet or belong to Taliban, and they believe like this is a government of Taliban for Taliban and by Taliban. So on the other hand, the Taliban also announced that there might be no demonstration till the good time, and also they say there must be proper channels, and anybody who want to protest in the country, they should register their claims with the Ministry of Justice, and they then have to appoint the exact times and else. On the other hand, there have been other reactions. Also, chief of the High Reconciliation member committee, they also say that this is not a wise decision to make monopoly in the government by the Taliban. Also, there have been many other political leaders of Afghanistan of different parties. Muhammad Mohakik, one of them, says this is a monopoly, and the Taliban are again chasing the failure that it's been experienced in Afghanistan. While on the other hand, Taliban say there is no power sharing, and they are on the road to finally draw a system. And all these things and formation of the acting government is because of the emergency control and services that have to be provided by the people.
Let's just take a look quickly for a moment at the reaction from a number of foreign countries. They are also disapproving, or a number of them are disapproving of this interim government. It certainly doesn't help, this news from a latest report, that at least 14 of the 33 members of the interim government are featured in a UN Security Council terrorism blacklist. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, suddenly after the announcement by the US and some UN members, Taliban had their own stance. They today stated that the states of Pentagon and also other countries are against the US Taliban agreement, and that was an agreement that first of all the US had to pull out their troops from Afghanistan, and the Taliban pledged to have no relationship with any extremists and international terrorist groups. So the Taliban say we have fulfilled our pledges, and it was also a part of the Doha agreement, which had three parts, and the second part was saying that the Taliban member and leadership will be excluded from all the list of the UN Security Council and the United States of America, and they say that's not a wise stance against the Taliban leadership, and they have to review their stance. According to the Taliban statement, there is diplomatic channels, and the US have to go through these diplomatic channels with the Taliban seem profitable, and also can also secure the interest of both Taliban and the United States of America.
Well, Zamar Alai, let's just turn for a moment to look at the humanitarian situation. The UN is saying that Afghanistan is facing an urgent crisis. What kind of aid does the country need at the moment?
Well, there is everywhere catastrophe and chaos in Afghanistan, because there has been a vacuum of the political system in Kabul, and finally Taliban formed the government, stating emergency services delivery to the people of Afghanistan. They also demand the international community to keep throwing the services to Afghanistan and the assistance. Also, UN Assistant Chief also pledged that they will not let the people of Afghanistan alone in a meeting with Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar a couple of days earlier. Now, Pakistan, Emirates, and also Qatar are the three major countries that have been supplying their assistance to Afghanistan, which is medicine, food, and shelter assets for the people of Afghanistan, but it's not limited to. While on the other hand, the UN also have urged to take steps for Afghanistan people to finally make them all those necessary requirements that the people of Afghanistan need at the moment. And there is also a looming economic catastrophe that in this regard also, because Afghanistan is a foreign aid related country, yes, and relied on 75% of the foreign assistance. That's why it's a harsh time and there's a dire need of the foreign assistance, particularly from the United Nations.
Right, and indeed, as the UN warns, a crisis is looming. Thank you so much for that update, Zamaria Lai Abbasan in Kabul. Now, staying with Afghanistan, foreign ministers and vice ministers from China and 5 countries neighboring Afghanistan have met virtually to discuss Afghanistan. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi says Western countries should take the main responsibility for the country's current situation. He also urged the Taliban to put their promises into action to earn international respect and recognition. Wang Hui reports.
Top diplomats from China, Iran, Pakistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan met Wednesday to discuss the Afghan issue. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said the 20-year military intervention and democratic reconstruction by the United States and other Western countries has failed in Afghanistan. The country is now facing severe challenges. He says the U.S. and its allies should shoulder the main responsibility for this situation.
There is a common view in the international community that the end of the intervention of the United States and its allies in Afghanistan is the beginning of the time when they need to shoulder responsibilities. They have more obligations than any other countries to provide economic and humanitarian aid to the Afghan people.
Wang also urged the acting Afghan government to keep its promises to gain international recognition.
The Taliban have recently shown their positive position in political construction, anti-terrorism and relations with neighbouring countries after entering Kabul. We welcome this, but the key is to put them into practice. There are 2 key points. First is to be inclusive, and second is to resolutely fight terrorism. We hope the Taliban can learn from the past, actively interact with all ethnic groups and factions under the interim government, and keep its promises to the outside world to earn international recognition.
Wang proposed that the neighboring countries should strengthen cooperation to help Afghanistan cope with the pandemic, keep ports unblocked, manage refugees, provide humanitarian aid, fight terrorism, and crack down on drug trafficking. The foreign minister also announced China will donate 3 million coronavirus vaccine doses to Afghanistan and provide it with over $30 million worth of humanitarian aid, including grains, supplies, and medicine. Wang Hui, CGTN, Beijing.
Let's take a short break now. Here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Hundreds displaced as flooding continues to wreak havoc in western Uganda. And more on the COVID-19 vaccine rollout in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
The East China Sea, home of dream seekers, where China's hub for reform and opening up connects with the maritime Silk Road. Whether it's exploring the busiest seaport and trade zone, or witnessing how locals strive for a better life. Join CGTN's adventure, Tides of Change Part 2. A journey enchanted by a dynamic ocean and beyond.
In July 2020, when a bulk carrier ran aground in Mauritius, local fishermen were among the first to propose solutions, but the government preferred to wait for foreign specialists to arrive.
Tout le monde peut poser question. Est-ce que ce bateau-là capable de faire affaire? Nous disons oui. Marée basse, c'est une rentrée, mais avec une marée haute, les vous appellerez sur outil.
In the meantime, the ship split in two, spilling an estimated 1,000 tons of oil into the pristine ecosystem. But anger was mounting with the government's delayed response, and the protests soon grew into a national movement.
Welcome back. Let's start in Ethiopia now, where more than 120 civilians have been killed in a village in the country's northern Amhara region. Local officials say Tigrayan forces were responsible for the killings, which took place last week. About 120 bodies have been recovered, but the true death toll could be higher, as there are a number of people still unaccounted for. Tigrayan forces have denied any involvement, calling this a fabricated allegation by the Amhara regional authorities. Tens of thousands of people have fled their homes in the region as Tigrayan forces advance. Unknown gunmen have reportedly raided a village in Nigeria's northern state of Kaduna, kidnapping about 18 people, including children. Nigeria has been witnessing a wave of mass abductions, mostly occurring in its northern region. Our correspondent Phil Ihaza reports from Abuja.
Locals say the abductors attacked Kekebi village on the outskirts of Kaduna's state capital in the wee hours of Monday night. The gunmen were riding on motorbikes and moved from house to house, taking children and their parents. A community leader confirmed the incident, saying the whereabouts of the victims remain unknown and the village is still traumatized by the attack. The police command in Kaduna is yet to comment on the matter. This is one of many attacks the country has witnessed recently. Since December last year, more than 1,000 students and scores of people across the northern states have been abducted. The Kaduna state government has, like and other neighboring states, has imposed strict measures for transportation. Motorcycles have been banned in many parts of the state and movements at odd hours restricted. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has also ordered all the security chiefs to end kidnappings and other forms of insecurity across the country. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Trials have begun in France over the November 2015 attacks in Paris, which left 130 people dead and hundreds more injured. 20 people will stand trial for their involvement in the planning and execution of the suicide bomb and gun attacks in the French capital. Ross Cullen reports.
This is the courtroom where the trial gets underway on Wednesday of the 20 people charged in relation to France's deadliest post-war atrocity. It's a massive undertaking. 110 days of hearings are expected. 5 judges will be presiding over the legal proceedings with support from an additional 4 magistrates. You can get a sense of the size of the trial by the fact that they have had to construct a special temporary courtroom to hold the legal proceedings in here in the heart of the historic Court of Appeal in Paris. More than 300 lawyers are going to be representing the victims, the families of the victims, and also the defendants themselves. But just one of the suspected perpetrators will be appearing in court, the French-Belgian national Salah Abdeslam. The 19 other people are charged with providing logistical support for the attack. On the night of the 13th of November 2015, 3 groups of attackers set off suicide bombs outside the Stade de France, opened fire in bars, in restaurants and inside the Bataclan music venue, killing 130 people in what the then French President François Hollande described as an act of war. The so-called Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attacks. The trial is expected to last until March next year. Ross Cullen, CGTN, Paris.
At least 10 people have been confirmed dead in a fire at a hospital in North Macedonia. The blaze broke out at a makeshift hospital for COVID-19 patients on Wednesday. The cause is not yet known, but the fire has been extinguished. Health Minister Venko Filipe expressed his deep condolences to the victims' families. The country of 2 million has reported a rise in coronavirus infections. Over 700 new cases and 20 more deaths have been registered in the past 24 hours. The World Health Organization has urged rich countries to deliver their promised COVID vaccines to low-income countries to help ease global health inequalities. It's also called for countries to avoid administering booster jabs, as millions have not yet received a single dose. Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says low-income countries are ready to run vaccination campaigns, but it is now up to manufacturers and rich countries to deliver the pledged doses. The WHO has set a target to enable every country to vaccinate at least 40% of its population by year's end. But the global program providing vaccines to poor countries is expected to fall nearly 30% short of its previous goal of 2 billion shots this year. Well, the Democratic Republic of Congo has received 250,000 doses of the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine through the Global Sharing Initiative, COVAX. Congolese authorities have described the arrival of the vaccines as a big step in the fight against the coronavirus. The country has struggled to vaccinate its population with AstraZeneca vaccines after a tiny percentage of people who received the jab around the world developed blood clots. CGTN's Chris Ochomringa sent this report from Kinshasa.
A new batch of desperately needed COVID-19 vaccines arrives in Kinshasa. The U.S. government has donated 250,000 doses of the Moderna vaccine via the COVAX initiative. The country initially received AstraZeneca vaccines, but many people refused the jab after reports of incredibly rare blood clots. And skepticism about COVID-19 vaccines in general is still widespread.
I don't want to get any COVID-19 vaccine because I've seen videos on YouTube talking about how dangerous they are. We've heard of people who died after getting these COVID-19 vaccines.
We got information from some people about how those vaccines have killed people in other countries. That's why I don't want to get any vaccines.
According to the Health Ministry, 83,000 people have been given the AstraZeneca jab out of the country's population of 90 million. The epicenter of the pandemic is in the capital, Kinshasa. Many COVID-19 vaccination sites here still aren't busy. This health facility has administered about 600 AstraZeneca vaccines since it rolled out its vaccination campaign in April. This city has an estimated population of 15 million people. Official records from the government show that fewer than 30,000 people have taken the jab in Kinshasa so far. Amy Rubango is a nurse at the Vijana Hospital in Kinshasa. She says they've recorded a slight increase in the number of people getting vaccinated.
Nowadays, we receive people who come here to get the jab because they have to travel to European countries that demand proof of vaccination against COVID-19. Many of them are desperate to get the shot. Some of them break down and ask us to get them the certificates without getting vaccinated.
In March, the DRC received 1.7 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine, but it had to redistribute 1.3 million to other African countries because their expiry date was around the corner. The low uptake of the AstraZeneca vaccine has prompted the country's president to promise his people a variety of options. Congolese officials hope the newly arrived Moderna doses will help boost vaccination rates across the country and turn the tide of the COVID-19 pandemic. Chris Ochomringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Let's go to Western Uganda now, where flooding has displaced hundreds of residents. Several parts of the country are currently experiencing heavy rains, and there's growing concern about the days ahead, as Leon Senyange reports.
Around 270 people have been displaced from their homes after heavy rains this month caused extensive flooding in Kasese district, Western Uganda. The flooding forced the nearby river Nyamwamba to burst its banks. This is all that is left for residents like Cleophas Simwe to pick up on.
It was terrible, terrible. That's why you are seeing all these stones. Here has been houses, they are all swept.
Heavy floods are common in this area during the rainy season. The threat has continued to worsen. The clouds are getting darker up the mountain and the rain could pour anytime soon. That is worrying because the water flowing down through this valley washes away anything in its path. The floods have disrupted the food security and supply chain in the region. The Red Cross says humanitarian aid is needed, with evacuees requiring items such as food, medicine, and clean water.
There are enormous needs on ground. And of course, we look at where these people are going to be at the moment, because some houses are completely destroyed. That means they need to reconstruct the houses if they are to go back. In how much time do they have the resources to even put up the houses again?
Despite the dangers, some residents have insisted on staying in the affected areas. They say they have nowhere to go.
Many of them are born here, so they don't know. They don't have any plan to go because your land is here, your place, you are born there. Now where are you going to go?
Officials warn that the flooding is not over yet, as more rainfall is expected over the coming days. For Wasimwe, it is survival that matters now, regardless of the imminent danger. Leon Senyange, CGTN, Kasese, Western Uganda.
Well, let's take a short break. Your business news up next. Coming up, India's Prime Minister chairs the 13th BRICS Summit being held this Thursday in a virtual format. And the depreciation of Ghana's cedi causing concern among many local businesses.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
Friends here, bottles are being thrown. As they do so, we
have
have
3 critical bridges here in Nairobi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Gas. So it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from the front line.
View of this front line position.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair the 13th BRICS Summit being held this Thursday in a virtual format. The summit is being attended by leaders from Brazil, Russia, China and South Africa. The theme of the summit is intra-BRICS cooperation for continuity, consolidation and consensus. India had outlined 4 priority areas, including reform of the multilateral system, counter-terrorism, using digital and technological tools for achieving sustainable development, and enhancing people-to-people exchanges. The leaders are also expected to exchange views on the impact of the coronavirus pandemic and other current global and regional issues. The summit this year coincides with the 15th anniversary of BRICS. Now, the new development bank, which was founded by the BRICS nations, has welcomed 3 new members, and it's also planning to move from its current location to a new office. Chen Tong visits the new site in Shanghai to find out more.
This is the new headquarters of the new development bank near Shanghai's World Expo Park. The bank is expected to move into this new building at the end of this month. Nice to meet you.
Same here. Welcome to our new home. Please
The building took 4 years to complete and boasts an overall floor area of 126,000 square meters, which can allow nearly 2,000 people to work here. The official move will take place on September 28th.
You just announced to welcome your 3 new member nations, and you are also going to move to this new office building at the end of this month. So it's kind of special at this point of time, right?
Absolutely. And Tong, as you asked this question, I realized that it is such a great coincidence. As we acquire new family members, we are moving to a new home as well. And most importantly, it's a place which is probably going to drive Pudong. It is going to make vibrant the whole place over the next 10-15 years.
At the beginning of September, the bank has announced to welcome the United Arab Emirates, Uruguay and Bangladesh as new members. These three nations are not included in BRICS, but have all shown an interest in promoting sustainable development. The bank says the addition will make their portfolio more diversified.
You know, it's a milestone event for NDB. We were just 5 members, although we accounted for 41% of the planet's population. Now we have 3 more, which means it gives us an opportunity to serve 180 million more people. And our development challenges are across the board similar, and we need to improve the infrastructure, we need to improve the sustainability of all our projects, of our livelihoods. So it's really important that the emerging markets develop rapidly and become more and more developed.
Since establishment in 2015, the bank has approved some 80 projects and $30 billion of loans. With new members on board, the bank's business is expected to further expand. And sustainable projects are expected to become its major focus. Projects in areas like transport, water and sanitation, clean energy and digital infrastructure are within the scope of the bank. Chen Tong, CGTN, Shanghai.
Well, the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, have committed to deepening their cooperation on COVID-19 related matters. China has already offered to make 10 million doses of its Sinovac vaccine available to South Africa. Sumitra Naidu tells us more.
The value of this free trade area.
It was already in 2018 when the BRICS countries agreed to develop a vaccine research center. In light of COVID-19, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has urged member countries to accelerate efforts to make the Johannesburg Declaration a reality.
We support the initiative to establish an integrated early warning system for preventing mass infectious diseases and believe this is a project that could be supported by the new development bank. Investing in science, technology and innovation will not only prepare us for future health emergencies, but it will also enable us to confront other global challenges.
In the meantime, China has offered South Africa 10 million doses of its Sinovac vaccine. The South African Health Products Authority conducted its research and testing and has given the go-ahead for a national rollout.
I would imagine that unlike the US and the rest of the Western superpowers, China, as a member of BRICS, would be finding a more equitable dispensation. But for an emergency like COVID, I would not really be looking to own any IP. I would be looking to have the capacity to produce the vaccine and develop it to keep up with a mutating virus so that I don't have to lock up the economy because there's no vaccination available.
South Africa is participating in several research initiatives with continental and international partners to develop, manufacture and distribute its own COVID-19 vaccine.
Having development in your own country on your doorstep will mean, one, you can negotiate what percentage of what you produce will be for local consumption. But also, it'll build the capacity. There will always be a health crisis that involves people moving and infections that can ground the economy. Therefore, it will be in the best interest of every country, especially where the population is high, to have the capacity local.
The BRICS Vaccine Research Center is crucial for the continent's fight against current and future infectious disease outbreaks. South Africa is expected to push for this at the BRICS Summit. President Ramaphosa will also impel members for more vaccine commitment. South Africa is still in the midst of a third wave, while some lockdown restrictions remain in place. Only 11% of the population in South Africa has been vaccinated thus far. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Turning to currencies now, the depreciation of Ghana's cedi against the US dollar is taking a toll on many businesses. The cedi has lost more than 1.6% to the US dollar this year, its highest depreciation in 3 years. Some analysts predict it will fall by 3% more by the end of the year. Traders want the government to step up efforts to stabilize the currency. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai reports from Accra.
Nana Owusu sells building materials. He says his business was hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic last year.
A lot of customers hold on. We even do follow up the project we are doing at first. They said, oh, no, unless the pandemic or like we see a change in the system, without that they can come and buy the building material. So in this case, our sales, it was not moving at all.
Now Owusu's business is starting to pick up as Ghana's economy tries to recover from the pandemic. But the prices of building materials have gone up. A bag of cement was sold at $5.80 in January. It is now selling at $8.25. Cement producers say they've had to increase the cost of the product because the prices of raw materials, which are mostly imported, have shot up. Analysts link the hike to the depreciation of the cedi against the US dollar.
If the currency depreciates, it hurts importers because now they import at a higher cost because they need more local currency to exchange for the same amount of foreign currency. And so their cost of operation goes up and they can pass that on to consumers and it makes cost of living higher.
In 2018, one cedi bought you $1. Now you need 6 to buy that same dollar. There are a number of factors at play, the biggest of which is capital flight. Investors have pulled large sums of money out of the country, concerned over its fiscal health and the government's budget deficits. Ghana has received $1 billion from the International Monetary Fund to boost its economic recovery. While this will help shore up the central bank's foreign exchange reserves, some analysts say it won't reverse the depreciation of the cedi entirely.
Whilst there is that support, you don't expect all of it to be pumped onto the market. So there's still some small room for some strategic intervention and some allowable depreciation. Then, of course, we expect the Ghana Cocoa Board to also do its annual syndicated facility, which will also bring over $1 billion into the economy. And then we also are looking forward to whether the government would be able to close or conclude its planned sustainable bond issuance before the end of this year.
Analysts say the cedi is likely to further depreciate against the US dollar, but many traders like Nana Owusu want steps taken to improve the country's economy so they can reduce the cost of doing business. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Shoprite, Africa's largest supermarket retailer, released an impressive set of full-year results despite a tumultuous year with COVID. The group posted an 8% rise in sales and a whopping 24.6% rise in furniture sales. CGTN's Sumitra Naidu spoke to Shoprite CEO and filed this report.
Shoprite has always positioned itself as a low-cost, value-for-money supermarket chain. The retailer thrived during the pandemic as customers looked for just that, the basics at lower prices.
We've got very good momentum at the moment. There's good innovation all around in the business. Very pleased with the volume growth that came out, the margin that was achieved, and still staying true to ourselves in the sense that staying the lowest price supermarket in South Africa.
Just as the pandemic hit in 2020, Shoprite launched its delivery service 60/60. In just a few months, over 5 million shoppers signed up. The service is proving a major success, even as restrictions eased, allowing shoppers to return to stores. Interestingly, furniture sales jumped 25%. Shoprite also completed its review of Africa, closing up shop in Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Madagascar.
We exited some of the countries and now we are left with 10 core rest of Africa countries. Returned back to profitability. We put ourselves a short-term target of 300 to 500 million for that segment. fourfold growth over last year, 307 million. So I think the short-term target has been reached, and we do believe that this segment can be sustainably profitable going forward.
Shoprite has close to 3,000 stores across Africa and is South Africa's largest private sector employer with 142,000 staff. The group managed to create close to 4,000 new jobs in the last year, but it did take a beating with the recent rioting and looting in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal.
231 stores damaged and to various extent. The biggest call out there for me is the fact that we are carrying 3,500 of our employees whose workplace has now been closed. Of those 231 stores, we've reopened 150 of them. The damage is extensive. We are insured for most of it, but there, of course, are costs like security and the staff costs that we will have to carry.
The group's gross profit was up 10%. RSA sales were up 6.9% for the year to July. Liquor trade growth dipped because of the liquor bans in South Africa. Non-RSA trade declined again, this time down 7.5% due to ongoing trading challenges, currency fluctuations and COVID restrictions. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, that's where we leave your business news, but here's what's still ahead on Africa Live. Uganda sees an increase in the number of women in key cabinet positions.
Join us in Global Business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
There's been a marked increase in the number of women in key cabinet positions in Uganda. The shift has elicited both excitement and criticism. Uganda is still 7% short of attaining 50% gender parity in political positions, as recommended by the African Union and the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda. Isabel Nakiria reports.
Women now make up 43% of Uganda's new cabinet. 5 years ago, that number was just 27%. The Vice President, Prime Minister and her deputy are women, while key ministries like education, energy and lands are also led by women. But campaigners say it's too early to celebrate.
The ordinary woman still, is still in the traditional setup of patriarchy. And I don't know how we can work to make sure that an ordinary woman feels the benefits of gender equality, gender empowerment, and the 50-50 representation in all spheres of life.
Some Ugandans have criticized President Museveni's choice of ministers, calling them incapable of the tasks ahead. President Yoweri Museveni said he needed no advice on who to choose. Activists say Ugandan society has been slow to accept female leaders.
You do not see this much critical, writing and commentary about men in political positions because, well, men maybe are supposed to be there, or it's assumed that men are leaders. As simple and as silly as that sounds, that's really the perception right out there. So I saw a lot of misogyny being dished out to a lot of these women.
President Museveni is seen as trying to reward women for the big role they played in canvassing votes during the last elections. The appointed ministers have applauded efforts to get more women involved in politics.
So we are in charge as women. And in the next 5 years, the president has entrusted us, we are going to drive this country to the middle income status.
But some worry that the Ugandan president may dominate decision-making, leaving the women with less power to govern. The women's movement Akina Mamawa Africa argues that female politicians do not have enough of a voice. The World Economic Forum estimates it may take close to 150 years for countries globally to attain gender parity. While Uganda is making progress on equality in government, people are eager to see results from the new ministers. There are also questions on when Uganda will close the gender gap on political empowerment. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
Your sports news up next on Africa Live. Coming up, Tanzanian boxer Hassan Mwakinyo retains his African Boxing Union welterweight title.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Tanzania's professional boxing star Hassan Mwakinyo successfully defended his African Boxing Union welterweight belt. This after knocking out Julius Ndongo from Namibia in the fourth of their scheduled 12-round title fights in Dar es Salaam. CGTN's Daniel Kijo filed this report.
26-year-old Hassan Mwakinyo is fast growing into a giant in the boxing world. His latest win was a fourth-round technical knockout against Namibian Julius Ndongo. Mwakinyo is now ranked 24th out of around 1,500 welterweight boxers in the world.
What I've learned is to respect my coaches and to study boxing every day of my life. I think it is the only path that has enabled me to fulfill what I promised to do today.
Over the last 6 years, Mwakinyo has fought 22 times, winning 20 bouts and losing 2. To help others reach his level of success, his own boxing promotion company organized his last fight.
It was, or should I say, it is challenging, but it's not a challenge that takes us backwards, it's a challenge for us to grow. Our biggest goal is to hold the hands of upcoming boxers, talented boxers who want to move forward but have no help.
In addition to his present title, Mwakinyo holds a Universal Boxing Organization welterweight title as well as a World Boxing Federation Intercontinental Super Welterweight title. He is the only African on a list of 50 of the world's top boxers in the weight category. No other Tanzanian boxer has achieved the accolades Hassan Mwakinyo has collected. Fight by fight and punch by punch, he hopes to cement his name in Africa's boxing history. Going into the match, Mwakinyo had improved 13 positions in the world's welterweight division rankings. Tanzanian boxing fans are excited about what his win means.
Tonight's win means that Mwakinyo has elevated. When you defeat a boxer with 4 stars, it means you're of a higher caliber.
Mwakinyo is now eyeing a world title and has set his sights on defending world boxing champion Jamal Charlo. He hopes that would bring joy to boxing fans in his country and around the world. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Let's turn to athletics action now, where 25 champions and 41 other medalists from the Tokyo Olympic Games are in the running for the prestigious Diamond League trophy as the final event takes place in Zurich. Francine Nyonsaba cruised to victory in the women's 5,000 meters, beating Kenya's Helen Obiri to claim gold. In the men's race, Ethiopia's Berehu Aragawi topped the podium with a time of 12 minutes, 58.65 seconds. Two-time Olympic champion Ryan Krauser won his first diamond trophy, and his American compatriot Maggie Ewan cleared 19 meters twice to claim her first ever diamond trophy in the women's shot put. Sweden's Tobias Montler won the men's long jump with a last gasp, 8.17 meters. And Serbia's Ivana Spanovic triumphed in the women's long jump with 6.96 meters. The action continues with all 25 Diamond League finals scheduled for Thursday. Now, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea has been suspended from the International Olympic Committee until the end of 2022 for failing to send a team to the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Now, this means it will miss out on the Beijing Winter Games next year. The decision means the country's Olympic Committee will not receive financial support while under suspension and will forfeit support that had previously been withheld due to sanctions. The IOC will, however, reserve the right to make decisions on any individual athletes who qualify for Beijing 2022 and to reconsider the duration of the country's suspension.
With regard to Tokyo, we also had to address the fact that the only National Olympic Committee which did not participate in the Olympic Games in Tokyo was the National Olympic Committee of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. With this non-participation, they were violating the Olympic Charter and did not fulfill their obligation as stated in the Olympic Charter to participate in the Games of the Olympiad by sending athletes. Therefore, the IOC Executive Board addressed this situation and decided today that the National Olympic Committee of the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea is suspended until the end of the year 2022 as a result of its unilateral decision not to participate in the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020.
Taliban spokesperson Ahmadullah Wasiq has confirmed that the Taliban will ban women from playing cricket and other sports in an exclusive interview with Australian media. He further stated that sport was not needed since women's bodies might be exposed, especially now during times of high media coverage. This has led the Australia Cricket Board to scrap a planned test match against Afghanistan's men's team if the Asian country's Taliban rulers do not allow women to play the sport.
They do not need the sport. They will get exposed and not follow the dress code, and Islam does not allow that. Even if you face challenges and problems, we are